Welcome to the City Council meeting, Oroville, California, December 3rd, 2019, where we are just reconvening from closed session, where direction was given and no action was taken. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd just like to make an announcement that item number 9 is going to be removed from the agenda tonight. It will be brought back on the meeting on the 17th for a public hearing as an ordinance on the ban on flavored tobacco. At that time, any public members that are here will be able to provide their input and thoughts regarding the issue, and those thoughts and input will be considered by the council and will be included in the ordinance or removed from the ordinance, and then it will be voted upon by the council at that time. Right now, there was not adequate time to publicly notice this and to advertise it to have a public hearing tonight, so the public hearing will occur on the 17th.
Okay, thank you. So anyone here specifically for item number 9, we will re-agendize for December 17th. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to public communication, hearing of non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
I do. I have 3. The first speaker is Beth Bello.
Time is in. Score 002. Good evening. My name is Beth Bello. I'm a resident for 11 years, an avid pickleball player, referee of professional and amateur matches at USA Pickleball Association sanctioned tournaments. Pickleball has developed a passionate following due to its super sportsmanship conduct, physical activity, social network, and its multi-generational appeal. Here's a few interesting facts. At the end of 2018, there were over 3 million players in the U.S., with a 12% increase from the previous year. At the end of last year, there were 7,000 listed places to play, with an increase of over 1,000 new locations. By the way, Oroville is on the list to play with our 2 pickleball line tennis courts at Bedrock. Total courts, U.S., 20,000, ambassadors, 1,800, including our ambassador, Barbara Eldridge. In 2018, I had the opportunity to referee numerous sanctioned tournaments. What I experienced in traveling to these tournaments is the realization of how large this sport is. I've met ambassadors, players, certified refs from all over the U.S. and other countries. November, the national championship happened to be in Indian Wells. It had 25,000 people go through the gates. 4,100 matches, 2,200 qualified players. What I'm getting to is the rest of the country, our local group is growing, and we are in need of dedicated pickleball courts. Though we do have 2 tennis courts with pickleball lines on them, these are not true courts. The length of the net is way too long. Our players cannot properly prepare for tournaments nor practice advanced play. With this, our members are going to Chico and Yuba City. Pickleball is a sport that can benefit youth and adult community physically and mentally. Our local group is hoping to apply for funding. Thank you for letting
you.
me speak this evening on behalf of my passion of the sport of pickleball and express our needs of dedicated courts for our community here. And I have handouts here, just some facts.
Give them to the clerk.
If you just bring those over here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Spear, and then the cameraman.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, come here tonight to pray for you all and pray for our city. And also, there's a bad wreck over on the freeway. And I'm just honored to be here to intercede for our city. So, Father God, we just want to start out by lifting up the accident on the freeway there and pray for the families of all involved. We pray for the first responders to keep them safe as they go into harm's way to rescue. And we thank you that you are always there. You never leave us nor forsake us. We pray for our mayor and vice mayor, our city council members tonight. We pray for the agenda that you have placed before them, that you give supernatural wisdom, supernatural provision, supernatural anointing. Thank you for the resident spoke up for wanting funding for pickleball and all other sports, Lord. We pray, Father, for a fresh breeze of anointing, of encouragement for all of those who get ideas to help better our whole community. We ask for more people to get involved, for more people to see the potential that you have for our city, for our county, that you have for our families, that we not focus on the negative, but on the positive and the potential. And Lord, thank you for today. It was such a beautiful day, and it was a gift from you. And so we acknowledge you in all our ways. We ask that you would just continue to give us your supernatural blessings for our city, for all your servants. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
The cameraman.
Good evening, Oroville City Council. First, I must say, when I get home tonight, I'm definitely going to look into pickleball. I've never heard of it. It sounds pretty interesting. Learn something new every day. Councilmember Goodson, I'd just like to say that's a nice hat. As a hat person myself, I must give a compliment. Don't have too much to talk about in general comment tonight. I just have one thing. I was listening to the scanner last Monday night and heard a call about a person at the Smartin final that was loitering around the bathroom. Wasn't too interested in the call until it was made a point over the radio that the person that called in was a council member. They didn't specify who, but I was able to make a public records request, and I found that that was you, Mr. Smith. And I was just wondering in your council announcement if you could elaborate on what the outcome of the call was. If you would rather do that personally afterwards with me, I'm fine with that too. I tried to reach out with you earlier today, but seems to me from what I got, you were around, but not when I wasn't when I was around. But that's okay. But just as a matter of public interest, I would like to know what the outcome was that call. It's very rare I get to follow up with people that are involved in calls that I'm interested in. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that was the last public speaker for public comment.
Okay, well, at this time, we're going to close public communication. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll make the motion to adopt the consent calendar as agenda-sized.
I'll second that.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to regular business. Item number 6, successor agency property sale.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What this item is it's a successor property that the city is currently in possession of. It's 750 Montgomery Street. We've been in possession of it for many years. It was a troubled property that had several environmental issues with it. It was a Brownsfield property. It had contaminated soil and has contaminated buildings on there now with asbestos and lead. The soil has previously been removed 6 inches to 12 inches over the top of the property, and the buildings are still there with the asbestos and the lead. We've been trying to sell this for many years. There has been an interested party for many years in this. The issue we ran into was the abatement of the asbestos and the lead on the property would cost the city more than what the value of the property was. So it would cost us somewhere around $80,000 to abate the problem. So how we've addressed this or readdressed this is we have entered into a conversation and negotiation with the interested party. The interested party is willing to pay full market value, which is the $56,000, which was the appraisal value of it. What we would like to do is put this property into escrow with the $56,000. From that, the interested party, the purchaser, will then take the lead as a private individual and abate the property, abate the environmental issues with it. Once the abatement is complete and we have certification that the abatement is complete, escrow will close. Prior to doing that, once that's done, excuse me, once that's finished, what the cost of the abatement will be paid out of the escrow account. It's being estimated somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 for the abatement. That will leave approximately $26,000 if it does go to the 30. The $26,000 then has to be transferred to the county, who is the oversight agency for the former RDA, which this is a property of. The county will then take that money. The city will receive back approximately 24% of that money. It will also place the property back onto the property tax roll, and it will start generating positive income for the city as opposed to sitting there now as a city property not doing anything. So what you will receive from this, essentially, as opposed to being a negative, if this deal is approved, you'll receive approximately $5,000 to $6,000 as opposed to losing any money on this, any more money than what we've already invested in the property. This has to go to the county's assessor agency and also the Department of Finance for final approval of this. But the first step would be for the council to say, yes, they're willing to do this, and then we'll take it to the county from there. The county oversight committee will meet in January to give the approval to that, and it will be sent on to the Department of Finance. In the meantime, we'll be working with the interested party, the purchaser, keeping them aware of what the status is, and then when it appears that everything is going to happen as it should, we'll move forward with them hiring someone to abate the condition and then finalize the sale.
Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item, public speakers?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any speakers on this item.
Okay, looking for comments from the council. Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. I think this is a real win-win for the city and the business that's close at hand there. I was involved in this property when I was with the RDA agency, and we had a very difficult time trying to move the property, plus the cleanup and all the other activities. It also looks to me like, after discussion with the business owner, that he has a real strong interest in improving the appearance as you drive into the community. So I think that's even a bigger plus and a win-win for the city. So I certainly support this idea.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yeah.
Councilmember Smith.
So as far as the professionals that are going to do the abatement within the contract, what assurances are instilled in that to, to control that?
We wouldn't necessarily have control over that. What we would require is proper certification that the property has been, the hazardous situation has been abated and cleaned up appropriately, and the proper disposal of the materials has occurred. That will be part of the escrow package that must be included with that prior to the close of the sale.
Okay. Yeah, but obviously you'd have to have somebody that has, the appropriate certifications.
Absolutely, they'll have to be
That's all-
licensed and insured to do that type of work.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any other comments from the dais? Having none, looking for a motion to adopt successor agency resolution number 1901.
I move that we adopt the resolution number 19-01.
I'll second that.
Mr. Mayor?
Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, can we back up just a touch? The cameraman had requested to speak on item number 2. If you still have a comment, Mr. Cameraman? Yes, sir.
Item number 2 of the consent calendar.
We just want to afford the cameraman an opportunity to speak.
I'd like to remind everyone to please have your blue cards in before the item comes up so we don't create a circular discussion on things.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Some places just like to go between item or item. I'm glad to see you guys like to go in alphabetical order, if you will. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'll keep it quick. I just wanted to point out here on item number 2, this is a great idea. I will definitely, if this is approved, I definitely will be participating and trying to visit all the museums here in Oroville to take advantage of this opportunity, considering that some of these museums, the price is not too expensive, but it's about a round trip on a local bus route on the B line, which is $1.50 round trip, $3. Not too expensive, but sometimes you can either go to the museum or you could either go to the places you need to go. But I think this is a great opportunity. Definitely take advantage of this. Learn, like I said, with our pickleball there, more opportunity right here to learn more things every day, and more importantly, history. You know, you may never get to see something in one of these museums ever again. You know, museums are very educational. They provide knowledge, and you know, maybe in 100 years from now, there may not be any more museums. It might just be all on a hologram, but who knows? I might not be around to see that, and you know, but that could be the future. So take an opportunity like this while you can to learn. It's a great opportunity, and I hope it gets approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more
Mr. Mayor, if I
speakers?
could, there are no more speakers, just for clarity on that particular item, on number 2, the recommendation was for the museums to be free on February 29th of 2019. There is no such date. So let's change it to 2020 on the recommendation. So it was a mistake. It's my mistake. I'll own that one. I just wanted to correct that, make everybody aware that it is 2020.
Thank you. Item number 7, City of Oroville Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council. This item has come about at the request of many community members and also our council. What this essentially addresses is the placement of speed humps, speed bumps, or rumble strips in neighborhoods for traffic calming measures. Right now, as it exists, we have no policy or procedure for this to happen. How it typically happens is an individual will either come to council, write a letter, or contact a council person and request that something be done in their neighborhood to implement some sort of traffic calming measures. It's not so simple as going out and just putting down speed humps into a neighborhood. There's a process that needs to be followed. A traffic warrant study needs to be done. Information needs to be gathered. With the city not having a policy to do that, how it had typically happened in the past is we would task our city engineer with developing this warrant so that it showed that these traffic calming measures would be appropriate for the neighborhood. With this policy that we're suggesting to adopt, it actually puts the procedure in place. It also provides a pamphlet for the interested individuals that are having an issue in their neighborhood where they would like to have traffic calming measures. It asks a few general questions, and then it asks the individual to gather some data. And then it gives the individual a timeline of what they can expect of what's going to happen. Some of this, depending on the necessary calming measure that can occur, can take as little time as 6 months, and it can take as much as if we had to, and this is the worst absolute case scenario where we had to redesign the street, rebuild the street, revamp everything, 2 to 4 years. That would The reason why that would take so long is because it would be necessary to obtain grant funding or some sort of funding source to rebuild an entire road, but that is absolute worst-case scenario. This policy allows us to go out, gather that information, and to implement the changes in the neighborhood based upon the professional recommendation of our engineer. The council would be made aware as these speed bumps or humps are being put in so that you are aware of what's going on in the community, but it wouldn't necessarily have to come to you for each individual decision because you put a policy in place and we're having an engineer do that. A couple of the pieces of equipment that is going to be necessary in order for us to gather the necessary information and data to make an educated and informed decision about what measures are appropriate for that particular neighborhood is going to be some traffic measuring instruments, essentially for lack of a better term, radar trailers to gather information, data collection radar trailers. Currently, our police department does have a radar trailer, but it doesn't do data collection. It just flashes a speed up. So with that, I'm going to let Chief Dill talk about the radar trailers that would be necessary for not only gathering the data, but also for public safety issues for calming traffic.
For you. I know the packet was rather large, and once I printed them, I realized the green and the white, you can't read it in what's probably in your hand. So that's what's on the screen in front of you now that you might be able to read it a little bit better. That's the pamphlet that Mr. Legron was speaking about that would be accessible to the public. There's a couple back here. If anybody in the audience wants to look at it, they're there. Speed and traffic issues in neighborhoods is a quality of life concern. There's been a number of people that have made complaints, concerns about it. So this is an attempt to have a plan to mitigate some of those things. Mr. Legron covered, I think, all of that. So now we're to the trailers or the radar trailers, if you will, that we would like to have. Did some research, and radar trailers, they're commonly called radar trailers. This is more of a it does more than that. A standard radar trailer that the police department has simply puts your speed on as you drive by. And if it's over the posted speed limit, then it might flash in red versus yellow. You've probably seen it out. We've had it out a lot of times. The trailers that we're looking at purchasing or would like to purchase now, they do radar, just like I described. They also traffic count. They will count how many vehicles come through the area at what speeds, and it's all contained. It contains the data within. This will allow the traffic study that's discussed in the plan in front of you to be completed. They also double as a message board. So if you're out and if you normally are driving down the road, you might see a sign that says slow down, workers ahead, anything like that, road closed from. So for example, if we needed to have no parking in downtown Oroville because the parade's tomorrow, we can put this out on Saturday or Sunday and say no parking on these days. It will be used in a multitude of ways. So when I did the research, we found through Traffic Logics, in your packet, it has a quote. What I handed out is a different quote than that one. This one came well after I was able to get the staff report done. The trailer comes with a 1-year cloud subscription that's included in the cost. If you decide to continue that after your first year of free service from that, it's $500 per year to have that. What that will allow is there's a lot of people involved that would be involved in the traffic study. Engineering would be involved, public works would be involved. It will allow those individuals to log on their computer in any town USA and access the data from the trailer that's out there. They'll be able to get real-time updates on the traffic control and all of that such. If after a year we don't like that, it's not something we use, we just simply don't pay the $500 a month to continue the cloud service. The trailers themselves that we're speaking of are approximately $12,000. This is a trailer that's pulled behind a vehicle. It's set up at a location of our choice, and that's what the first quote you have in your packet is. Once Mr. Legron and I were speaking a little bit more about it, in the police department, the one trailer we have is very old. I couldn't even tell you the year that it was purchased, but I think it's ready to be surplused and moved on. If we were to get authorization to buy two, we would be able to be more effective in the plan that we're trying to move forward. I talked to the company Traffic Logics. They're willing to offer us a slight discount. So what you have that I passed out is a quote for two, and it shows the $500 discount. The total still is within the staff report of not to exceed $30,000. It's $26,577.93. So what we're looking for tonight is, we'll take whatever the direction is, at least one, but two would be much more, we would be much more effective if we had two. If, in the event that these are not being used for traffic studies, my intention would be to have them out in the city. And a radar trailer has definitely been proven to reduce speeds, and they're very helpful when they work and we can have them out there.
Chief Dill, if I could, just for clarity, ask one question. During your presentation, you said that the monthly subscription is $500 per month per trailer?
Per year, I'm
Per
sorry.
year?
If
Okay.
I said per month, I misspoke. I meant
Okay.
$500 per year.
Can't afford the
per
trailers.
trailer. So if we had two and it's something we wanted to do, it would cost $1,000 per year after the first year to continue to have the cloud. The first year will give us an opportunity to see if it's even something that we're interested in having or if it's beneficial, and we could, I would think, make that decision as we get closer to the end of the year.
Great.
And there's the other side of the trifold that you have there, if you wanted to see that.
Thank you. Do we have any public speakers on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have one public speaker, the cameraman.
Good evening again, Oroville City Council. I'd like to comment here on number 7. I like the idea. As the chief said, speed radar trailers do reduce speeding. But my more thing is, if we're going to spend $15,000, why don't we just have more potentially officers doing a visual deterrent? Now, what I mean by this is a good example is an Anaheim Police Department officer explained to me, it's very simple. I can write people a ticket, but while I'm writing that person a ticket, I'm away from my little area where I like to be, that everybody can see me, and when they see me, they slow down. But when I'm writing a ticket and I'm not there, people don't see me and they speed up again while I'm writing a ticket until I get back. I mean, I still can write a ticket, but the more time I'm spending in my spot where I'm visually seen, I'm slowing more people down. And he's found that way to be an effective method to control speed and be a little bit light on the wallet. But again, people will still speed regardless, and I've seen them speed right past police officers and then get pulled over shortly afterwards. But the main thing I think we really should invest here is the ability to document and count traffic. Because I think, in my opinion, the majority of the speeding is resulting from people diverting off the main road of 162. If you ever driven 162 Oro Dam on a Friday night, it's pretty packed, and unless you don't want to sit in that, congestion of traffic, I've noticed people tend to detour through town and other roads, which are typically 25 to 35 miles an hour, and Oro Dam is a 35-mile-an-hour road, but I've seen people do 40 on there, and they forget that they're more so going through residential areas and have that mindset of they're still driving on a main road. But that's just my opinion. I think we should invest more so in the traffic.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that's the only speaker for this item.
If I could add, Mr. Mayor, the cost of a radar trailer, of the 2 radar trailers, would be approximately $26,000, a one-time cost. The cost of a police officer to do the deterrent, as suggested, would cost us approximately $125,000 annually. So this is a one-time cost as opposed to an annual ongoing cost. It would become economically unsustainable at some point if we did that. Yeah, it's a good idea, I understand. I think the idea of a message board along with the trailer is very important because we are not going to solve this by ourselves. We have to send a message to our community that this is a partnership. And by advertising the average speed in their neighborhoods and asking them to, let's all try to reduce the average speed in your neighborhood, I think that sends a positive message to the community that, hey, we're working with you. There is all the potential of a citation, but it's also, this is important to us because it's a safety issue, and it's particularly of importance to the individuals that live there because it's their neighborhood. So I think the message board is a very important component of this trailer.
Thank you. Councilmember Draper.
I think this is an excellent idea, but my concern is there's a lot of traffic on Mitchell Avenue. And I've said this before, 8 a.m., noon, 3 p.m. to 6 o'clock. And on the way to the meeting tonight about 5 o'clock, heading west on Mitchell, okay, you have to wait to get out, obviously, because the traffic is so heavy on Bridge Street for people heading to Oro Quincy Highway there by Jerry's Market. So when you get to that stop sign on Mitchell, there's usually 20 cars lined up, waiting, trying to get out onto Bridge Street. And so does that kind of traffic congestion have to wait for people in the neighborhood to fill out the
No, I
forms?
think that's not really going to be a neighborhood traffic calming issue. That's going to be more of a configuration of that particular intersection with Oro Quincy and 162 being so close to Mitchell and Bridge right there. It kind of creates that issue. So what we're going to have to do is look at that as from our traffic perspective of our engineer and say, what can we do to reconfigure that intersection to eliminate that congestion issue. I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, when I was working as a police officer, I responded to multiple collisions there because of the old intersection. When it was put in, it was appropriate, it worked, but with the amount of traffic now, it's just, we're gonna have to look at how to reconfigure that.
And
So
it's-
it's not necessarily this program that would address that. This
Right,
is something
okay,
our
good.
traffic engineer would have to look at.
But that has gotten progressively worse in
Yes,
the
ma'am.
last 3 years, to where now it's really just waiting, you know, for an accident or some kid to get run over there in the dark. It's a dangerous spot. My other question is, I'm looking at these NTCP steps, you know, which is really helpful. I thought that was really excellent. But from when the neighborhood people complete and return a community action request to the city to step 8, the minimum that can take, according to the estimates on the right there, a minimum of 14 months to a maximum of 33 months, just to get some relief for people in your neighborhood that are running a stop sign by the school. And so I'm concerned that this is a fairly lengthy process to see anything actually get done.
I think it depends on what the measure is that has to be implemented. If it's something and not that it's simple, but it's something as simple as putting in some speed bumps, I don't think you'll see the 33-month process for that. I think it's something that's going to be probably a little more complex where we're doing some other extraordinary measure for that.
Okay. The other thing was, there are about 3 pages on the form to fill out. And part of it is devoted to signatures of neighbors. And I noticed that you can't have 2 people in the same residence sign this. It has to be people from separate dwellings that sign this and indicate that they want the neighborhood considered in the neighborhood traffic calming program. So I'm just wondering, you know, how off-putting this might be for most people to actually, you know, fill out the paperwork. But
We could, you know, this is something that we would like to have. What we're looking for is just that there's a general consensus within the neighborhood. You know, we're not going to, you know, exclude this, for lack of a better term, petition because, you know, your signature is here. You know, one person could sign for 2 people. It's nothing like that. We're just looking to make sure that we don't have one person in the neighborhood who is upset at the world. We want to make sure there's multiple people that are seeing the same issue in their world.
all right, well, thank you then for clarifying that.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you, Mayor. I think with the Oroville's new population, we've already had a demand and a need for something that can respond fairly quickly, and certainly the traffic or radar trailer, however you want to call it, is a great idea, and I like the idea of 2, and I think we've grown up enough to have at least 2 in our town, maybe 3 or 4, but I do know that radar trailers clearly work. I can give you 2 or 3 recent situations where you've deployed them, and it has made substantial difference. And I think that the new screen and the new electronics that I've seen are really kind of interesting. To be able to deploy that with a message on it is far more superior. And that radar trailer's been around since the 80s. And I almost can tell you the year, but I'm going to hesitate. And I certainly support the idea of having a traffic calming policy, because everyone has the right to make a reasonable complaint and then have that complaint handled properly. And that's what I see nice about the policy. And it helps us put those things in place. The other options I like too are the textured payment. That's a great idea because that warns people right off the bat. And they could feel that in their steering wheel, it was a nice idea. So I like the policy. I think it works. I think it's a big step forward. And I certainly support 2 trailers for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hatley.
Chief, that trailer, I mean, yes, it's been around many, many years. The problem is it was not even usable for a while because I don't even know if this is the same one that got run into years ago, and for some reason we didn't have the money to fix it, or it couldn't be fixed because it was outdated. And that's what concerns me here a little bit too, is this new trailer, is there going to be like a little O&M fund somewhere set up that if somebody runs into it, we're not waiting a year down the line to see if their insurance is actually going to pay off, if they even have insurance when they run into it. Because historically, every time that trailer's been hit or something, from guardrails to the trailer, people either don't have the insurance to cover it or not enough insurance. And I just want to make sure that we don't buy something and it gets run into, and the next thing you know, it's sitting down at City Yard because we don't have the money to fix it, or we can't get it fixed through that proper thing. That's one concern. The other concern, or not a concern, but it's something that I think about. On when you're programming, excuse me, this trailer with messages or whatever, do you physically have to go and do it at the trailer, or can you do it from off-site, through the computer system some way? I was kind of curious about that because you're talking about the cloud, and trust me, I know very little. I have a flip phone, so I know very little about that, and I don't have a computer. So what I'm telling you is does that mean that you can do it, like from the PD, for instance, program whatever you need to do with that trailer, or do you physically have to go to it?
You can do both. So with the cloud service, it's cloudy outside now, but it's, you just didn't know. You can do it from a computer. So if you have for the first year, we will be able to do the programming from a computer through the cloud service. If we opt at the end of the year not to pay the $500 per year fee and we get rid of the cloud, then whoever were to go set the trailer up, when they set it up, they would simply program what they wanted to say, lock the box, and it's got the program in there. But that would then have to be done at the trailer. If you wanted to change it, you'd have to physically go to the trailer if you didn't have that cloud service. If you continue the cloud service, then anybody that has the access can log on their computer and simply change it.
Okay, and then the information that's retrieved, like when you're doing a traffic study, is that going to be capable, where you're capable of retrieving that, like to a hard copy to where?
So what'll happen is, again, if the cloud service remains, or at least during the first year, it'll all be able to be accessed. Our city engineer can log in at any office and access the data that's stored there. If you don't have that, then it's access to Bluetooth capability on the device where you have to come down and download it. You can certainly go to the device, download the data if you don't have the cloud service.
Okay, just to be clear, I'm for the 2 trailers. I just want to make sure that we have some, because before, and.
Yeah, I can answer, I believe I can answer that for you, Councilman Hatley. The first off, the chief is a little more optimistic than I am as far as the programming of the signage. I would recommend to the council that at all times we disable its Wi-Fi ability when it's out on the street to change the signage. I've seen people change signage, and we don't necessarily want that out there with somebody hacking into it and putting up a very inappropriate sign that would take us hours to be made aware of. So with that in there, I would recommend that part of our policy is that we disable that when that's out there. We can download the information as necessary. I don't think there's anything critical about getting the information instantaneously as cars are going by for a traffic study. The second part is part of your budget annually now includes a capital equipment replacement fund. So in the event that somebody did hit one of these trailers and we were unable to subrogate back against their insurance and recover the money, you would have the money in the capital equipment replacement fund to replace the trailer immediately.
Okay, and so does this have also camera capability to photograph the vehicles or not?
Well, that would be a trade secret that we're not going to let people know. Drive by it fast and find out.
Sort of like being on double secret probation, I got it. Okay.
I don't know the answer to that question. I have to yield to Chief.
The answer, well, it has a lot of capabilities. This trailer in particular does not photograph traffic. It does not take photographs. It does have some other features with lights and flashing things, but it does not take photos.
Okay, I was just curious. I didn't know if it, because it's not going to, you can't go and print out citations from it.
No, obviously.
Right, so, okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Goodson.
So I'm going to piggyback because sometimes if you ask the same question a different way, you get different results. So I'm going to try this. It states that this trailer both records speeds and collects traffic counts to most accurately determine the state of traffic in your neighborhood. So I live on Oroville. There's a lot of traffic. I want this puppy to do more than that. So I'm trying to think out of the box. Since it's programmable, can it be programmed with a monitoring mechanism that does collect data in regards to vehicles who cause speeding offenses?
So if I understand.
I think
who
Chief,
the resp-
yeah, I think Chief Dill, what the councilperson is looking for is a particular vehicle. One of the issues you have with that is individuals get cited, not vehicles. So it's, if it's a blue Chevy with license plate ABC 123, it was the blue Chevy with the ABC 123, but with the lack of ability to identify a driver, that's where you run into that's where you run into your problem.
So we will know. There's X amount of vehicles that have been coming down the road and they've all been going, 45 and your speed limit's posted 25. But as far as
specificity,
specific vehicles, and obviously there can't be any enforcement taken on it. It's more for the knowledge of how much, what the vehicles are and the count and the.
Councilwoman Draper.
But it will also give you very
informational.
important information as far as what, if you have an average speed of, say it's a 35 mile an hour zone, you have an average speed of 52 miles per hour every day between 9:30 and 10:30, then it would be good information for the patrol officers to know, be in that area between 9:30 and 10:30, because there's a lot of people that are violating the speed laws. So it'll be able to give additional information, hints and clues and tips to our police officers through the collection of data.
So in the event that this is approved, how quickly can this go into implementation? Because we have some high traffic areas yesterday.
We will implement the traffic calming policy. We will remove draft from it. We will finalize it with our engineer. I want to thank Mike and his crew for that. They did a great job on this. I've been in engineering, our city engineer. I'll finalize anything in here that needs to be finalized with this, and we'll have it online by the 1st of next week. The radar trailers, Chief Dill will handle.
Upon approval, I would start working on ordering as soon as I get approval to do that, and then it would just be the fact of those being purchased, delivered, and probably a little bit of training to us on how we need to work them.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Very briefly, two things. Obviously, there's a lot of support behind this. One advantage, though, if we did leave it online, would be potential Amber Alerts. If there's a way that we could message out if there's a abducted individual. And the second thing is I know the old one is dying. You said maybe take it to the scrapyard or something. Or I say as long as it's working, there are neighborhoods that we can park it in. Right now it's deterring speed, so as long as it's still working, I don't see a problem. I don't see why we can't just park it down Oroville. Maybe ABC 123 doesn't know how fast they're going. But I just see a use for it while we still have it.
Sure.
That's it.
Thank you. And comment on Councilmember Pittman's comment about he thinks the year is 1980, 80. I think it's up on the screen because every time I go by it says 80.
Good point.
Yeah. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to highlight that this is in response really to the constituents, to all of you, because there's been a lot of concern about, certain individuals' behavior when it comes to driving a little too fast, Mr. Mayor. And then I just wanted to link these two trailers, and again, commending you looking ahead to the future to be able to have multitasking, and then also meet a specific criteria. We have to collect this data in order to implement the policy. So when a constituent says, hey, there's too many speeders, they knock on doors, they collect the signatures, and they bring it to us. And then we have to do this due diligence of documenting that. So we have to basically have the trailers to implement this program. I just wanted to point that out. So when we vote on this, that we're really doing two things here. We're responding to the needs of the folks that have been brought to us. And then we're also funding the ability for the city to get it done at the end of the day. I just think it was important to kind of connect the dots for everyone. And so, yeah, I think it's great. And then the other piece was, I think, Bill pointed it out, that these are maximum numbers, the timelines, that hopefully if there's a real egregious issue in a particular neighborhood, we can get it done a lot quicker. It's just that's the maximum time. So, but we're going to operate hopefully shorter than that. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
those numbers are, I hate to use the term worst case scenario. It depends on what needs to be done with the results. I mean, a lot of the issues that might get presented could be solved a lot sooner than what the timeline shows.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there are no more comments, we're looking for a motion for item number 7.
I'll make a motion that, where am I here? We'll move forward with the implementation of the proposed neighborhood traffic calming program and purchasing 2 Traffic Logics signboard trailers in an amount not to exceed $15,000 each.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number
yes.
8.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Again, this is an item it's an access agreement for Old Ferry Road. Old Ferry Road is the road that is used to access down to the bathhouse, which is across from the fish hatchery down on the river. That is a kind of a complex road down through there. The first part of the road belongs to the city of Oroville. The second part of the road belongs to the Union Pacific Railroad. City of Oroville owns the first part of the road. Union Pacific owns the second part of the road. Third part of the road is owned by DWR. During the spillway failure in 2017, there was some washout of our part of the road. DWR repaired our part of the road as a good faith payment for having an access agreement to their part of the road over the top of our part of the road. During the course of the time this passed since then, there's been some issues that have arisen with the portion owned by DWR. The council has received multiple complaints in this council chamber regarding the condition of that area. That being said, prior to us bringing this to the council, we have sat down with DWR and met about that particular part of the road. It's called the Seabow Trail, I believe is how they pronounce it. Swimbow Trail. What that is the portion of the road that goes essentially from where the diversion, I don't know if it's the diversion dam, it's the fish ladder. It's where the fish ladder's at to the diversion dam. It's essentially right there at the fish ladder. And then there's some gazebos, trash cans, some art that's up in that area. Why this agreement is important to DWR is that when they're working on the diversion dam and they have a vehicle parked, a crane or some large piece of equipment on the diversion dam, they can't cross the river. It's blocked, so they're blocked out from that side. So they need access from this side in order to do the necessary repairs and maintenance to the diversion dam. That part of the trail was not being cared for. There was garbage there. We were receiving complaints of overflowing garbage cans, excessive fuel loads. They weren't weeding, essentially, is what it comes down to. We met with DWR. DWR has agreed with us that they are responsible for that particular part of the area and that they are going to begin taking care of that. They will be bringing forward an MOU as part of this access agreement that they will be caring for the area, dumping the garbage, doing things like that. One of the concerns that was expressed to me regarding the access agreement was a term, so that we can review this every few years to ensure that these things are happening and that we don't have a council chamber full of people upset with us about what our neighbor is doing. So I have been in contact with Leroy Ellinghouse of DWR. Leroy has assured me that the MOU will include a 5-year term. It will be an agreement to care for the property up there with us granting them access. The things that they're doing for us for the access to go over our road is they repaired the road for us in 2017, even though an argument could be made that, hey, they were the approximate cause of the damage. Regardless, the road needed to be repaired. It was repaired. They've done that. They are agreeing to be responsible for that. It was no negligence necessarily on their part for why they weren't taking care of the road. What it was there was an old agreement, which was a handshake that was made years ago that between some volunteer group and the Department of Water Resources that the people would take care of the area. And the people that currently work here now they were aware of the area, but they weren't aware of the condition that they were responsible for taking care of. They are aware of that now. We will incorporate all of those into an MOU. What they're asking for is just an access agreement to their property over our roadway, which we normally keep open anyway.
Do we have any public speakers on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Open for comments from the dais. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the way this came back on our radar was at an ORAC meeting where Vice Mayor Thompson and I sit on a committee. It was brought up by a constituent. And so then we brought it over here to the city and addressed it. And I guess I'm just using this as an occasion to say that comments do matter, and so we do appreciate that feedback. And the fact that the city council sits on various committees throughout our county does matter, and so I just appreciate folks paying attention and bringing things to us, and from time to time it makes a difference, and this is one of those. That's it. Thank you.
Are there any more comments from the dais? Looking for a motion on item number 8.
I move that we approve the agreement and direct staff to sign it.
I'll second that.
Motion carries.
Moving on to item number 10.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council. What this item is it regards a resolution of intent to move the city toward district voting as opposed to at-large voting. To give you a little history of how we ended up where we're at today with this particular issue is on October 28th, we received a letter from an attorney from the law firm of Shankman and Hughes informing us that we were not in compliance with the California CVRA Act, which is the California Voters' Right Act. It requires cities to go to district voting in order to appropriately represent different minority groups and special interest groups so that everybody is appropriately and equally represented on local governing bodies. The California courts, along with the 5th District Court, determined that the minorities and special groups were not being appropriately represented on local boards and governing through at-large voting. That particular law came into effect in 2001 after multiple lawsuits by multiple cities. It was incorporated into the California Constitution. Now, one of the questions that I've heard quite a bit is, well, if we have a charter that says we're at large, how can this happen? Why do we have to do this? Well, this is a constitutional issue. This is the California Constitution. The Constitution in California will supersede your charter. I mean, so our charter cannot provide us protection in this or from this. Multiple cities throughout the state of California have attempted to resist this and to fight this. One city spent as much as $4.5 million in court trying to not comply with this to remain at large. They lost. They ended up paying the filing attorney's fees, and they also had to pay all of the court costs that were associated with this, and still went to district voting. So with that in mind, and with the history that exists with this, with it being a constitutional issue for the state of California, with legal advice, it's our best recommendation that we move toward district voting now. You could fight it in court, but it's been pretty well documented that we're going to lose. So we could lose money and do it, or we can move forward and apply that money toward a better use than just fighting something that we know that we're going to lose. With that being said, in order to properly do this, we have to identify where are the minorities in our community and the special interest groups or groups of interest. So in order to do that, we must hire a demographer. A demographer is somebody who identifies where groups or clusters of people live and where they're at, and how we break up our districts, because the districts need to be broke up so that each group is appropriately represented in that district. It wouldn't make any sense just to go onto a map and just draw 7 lines and say, there you go, now we have districts. Well, you still haven't accomplished anything because you haven't identified the groups that you're trying to identify. So we have to identify who those groups are through the retention of a demographer. Once we have that information, the council will have the ability to adjust those lines so far as the groups remain intact. Now, what that means, so that people understand that, is you could have 2 straight lines, and you have, 50%, I'm just going to grab Latino since that's what the letter was speaking of. You have 50% Latino, 25% Latino, 35% Latino, and it's a mix of others in there. Well, in order to do that, if you wanted to move that line, just put one in there vertically, you can do that. You just have to ensure that you have the same number of individuals in that group. So this line may have to go more that way, and another line may have to go down this direction. You just have to include a certain quantity of individuals in there, in that number. So you do have some ability to adjust those lines. It has to be reasonable. You can't, there has been some cities, I believe, that where council people have decided that it would be a good idea where council members that lived across the street to run the line right down the middle of the street. That don't work. You will be sued for that. It was recently done, I believe it was in
City of Martinez.
Martinez, yes.
Yeah,
So that did not work. That was very expensive for that community to do that. So what we're looking for tonight, part is just to explain to the community and the public why we're doing what we're doing, to let them know that this is not really a choice of this body. This body has 2 decisions: either spend money fighting something that they know that they're most likely going to lose, and I think it's probably 99% or higher that you're going to lose, or take this action. So what we're recommending as staff is that we do take the action to move toward districting with a resolution of intent to district. And we're also recommending that we hire Karen McDonald of Q2 Data and Research. Ms. McDonald is a principal in the business. She's a demographer. She is highly respected and is known to be fair and impartial in these types of situations. The estimated cost for the necessary work on this to determine our demographics in our city, to appropriately break our city into districts, would be approximately $25,000 for this work. This is going to require quite a bit of work. We have a timeline in which we must get this done. There's another factor that we have that a lot of communities don't have, and that's we have multiple special districts within our city. So it means that you have to be careful how you break your precincts, because if we start breaking precincts up, with an example would be South Feather Power and Water. If we start splitting that, then the county recorder would have to have multiple ballots for that area going to different individuals. And most likely what would happen is we would not be able to consolidate our elections with the county recorder. So we have to be careful how we do that. Ms. McDonald is familiar or been appraised of that, is aware of that, and says that she can get us to where we need to be and still stay within our precincts and meet all of the necessary needs. This intent of resolution tonight is nothing more than saying we're moving forward on this. Our timeline to get this done would be by April 1st of 2020. So the information could be sent to the county clerk recorder so it can be put into the county election system. This would be in place for the 2020 election for council and local seats, or local city council seats. After that, the good news is once we're done with that, the census is going to be happening this year, or 2020, and we get to do it all again in 2021. So it's one of those things that it's not going to go away. We're going to be dealing with this. We're going to be dealing with it probably every decade, maybe more, depending on how our city changes and grows. I believe that this is probably just a sign of our growth and our size now. We've crossed the threshold where we're becoming a little bigger. It's, can be looked at as positive or disturbing, but it's a reality of where we're at. What it would be is you would have, after this is done, you would have 6 districts, and you would have a mayor that is voted and elected at large.
Okay, are you finished? Thank you. Who is hiring the demographer?
The demographer will be hired through Cole and Huber. Cole and Huber is our legal counsel that will be running this this particular item. The reason that Cole and Huber is running this is because of the potential of litigation, exposure to litigation, and we have to get this right to make sure that we comply with all of the laws. So it's important to have our legal counsel being the leader on this and hiring this. This Karen McDonald of Q2 Data will be a contractor to Cole and Huber, who is our legal counsel.
I appreciate that. As long as this council understands that there will be no phone calls to this demographer for input. If there's input to be made for this process, it'll be made through Cole and Huber.
The input from the council, the demographer will be here at some point with this council. You will have, everybody will be present, and there will be interaction with the council as far as, because you're going to say, well, what if we move the line 2 blocks this direction? They should be able, through their software, to tell you, well, this is what that does to you. So no, that line don't work. Or if you move it here, they'll be able to provide you multiple suggestions, give you multiple maps. We also want to have them here so the public can have their input and their thoughts included in what we're doing.
Thank you. Are there any public speakers on this?
Mr. Mayor, I have 3 public speakers. The first one is the cameraman, and then Bill Spear, and then Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening again, Oroville City Council. I'm going to keep it semi-short. The city manager pretty much answered all my questions in his speech. My just question is, and I don't expect an answer on this, but how are we really going to work out these districts? It seems to me we have no choice here. Either we can just go ahead and comply, or we can fight and lose money. But it seems like to me we're just going to have to bite the bullet on this one. But the size of the city, and suppose, from my understanding, we have to break it up into 6 districts because each council person, the only person that's truly at large is the mayor. So, unless we're going to have disproportionate sizes, as in someone's going to have a huge chunk, or we're all going to have little tiny districts for each council member, it just seems that our city just isn't really, we're becoming bigger, but it doesn't seem, in my opinion, the size of a city where we need to carve it out into districts for representation. I think 7 people here is a lot for to govern the city. I think 5 is a reasonable number, but maybe we do need 7 council members. It just seems that it's going to be kind of tight for some people and maybe potentially larger for other people in representation, as in, maybe Councilmember Hartley may have a chunk this big, while Councilmember Draper may have a chunk this big. That's kind of disproportionate, but I'd like to see how this turns out. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, to answer that question, in this particular situation, size of your district doesn't matter. It is more who is in the district. So it could require a very large area and space to get the necessary demographics in that area, whereas others may be, exactly as the cameraman said, a very small area because there's a concentration. So size doesn't matter in this issue.
Bill Spear, and then Bobby O'Reilly.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. This sounds kind of crazy to me. It probably wouldn't be so complicated if our city had a more legible city lines. I live on Fifth Street and I'm in the county. I can't even vote in the city elections, and it don't seem very fair, equitable to me. There's all these little, a lot of South Side ain't even in the city limits. I think we need to fix our city limits first. You look at Sacramento, and I don't really agree with a lot that comes out of Sacramento, but they put a big circle all the way around, and it's easy to know. Before you're even in the city, you're into the Sacramento city limits. It would be fair for all the people in Oroville if we would address the issues of our city limits. It shouldn't be, I don't know, however it got drawn that way. I'm sure it's a whole bunch of different meetings through the years. But if we could fix this problem once, we wouldn't have to come back to it every time we want to put a little piece in or a little piece here or a little there. Just address this problem first, and then it'll make the redistricting a lot more fair and easy to figure out. But it has been frustrating, I know, for the people on the South Side for years and years and years, and I'm glad that we finally addressed that situation. But now that we have a little bit of extra funds, a little bit of resources, I think it would be wise to spend the energy on fixing our city limits once and for all, and then the redistricting wouldn't sound so confusing and bring more
Mr. Mayor, if I could respond to Mr. Spear, we are currently looking at multiple annexations for multiple areas to do exactly what he's saying, because we do have a very oddly shaped city. So we are trying to, for lack of a better term, square that up and get that done. The unfortunate part of this is that we are under a very tight timeline in order to avoid litigation. We do not have time for that would be necessary for the annexations, because if we did have the time, we wouldn't be doing the districting this year. We'd be doing it next year after the census, so that we only had to do it once and not immediately turn around and do it again. So we're under a very tight timeline on this. I understand what Mr. Spear is saying. We just don't have the time for that at this particular time.
Good evening, Council. Pleasure to be in your acquaintance. I just want to go on the record stating that I understand and appreciate that this isn't handed down from any of you as a council. This is people who feel that their pants are bigger than they are in our state. And it's a law firm that is running a get-rich-quick plan, in my opinion. When you get $30,000 minimum for every letter that you send out to a city, you tend to want to do that to all the cities. My opinion for Oroville is that this is going to be, although it's inevitable, it's going to happen, it has to happen. Oroville's not the place for this. It's unfortunate that we're being forced into this as a city. Districting is going to hurt this town tremendously. If you look at elections past and the amount of and the different ethnicities that have ran for council or have sat on council in this city, there's a wide variety of such. I ran last year. I'm Native American. Theo Wilcox, prior vice mayor, is of Asian descent. Janet Goodson is African American. I mean, we've had all ethnicities here. So my opinion is this is terrible. I wanted to be on the record to say that, and we're only going to hurt from this.
Mr. Mayor, that was the last public speaker on this item.
Okay, Councilmember Draper, please.
Well, as it's been pointed out, this has been the law since 2001. So we've had 18 years to get our act together, and so now our time is up. But from my perspective, when you look at dividing up the city into 6 different districts, and if we have a demographer, which Karen McDonald sounds like she's excellent, if we have a demographer who's fair, then this should be a real healthy process and a good thing for the city. And I think it's going to be good. People will know in their particular district whom to go speak with if they have issues for their particular area. Whereas right now, it's just, kind of whoever you can get in touch with. And I think that it's going to be a really good vehicle for better representation for the people in this town. And I may be absorbed into a district where there's already a counselor who's not up for reelection. And that's okay, things sometimes work out that way. But in the long term, I can see where this could be a really good thing for the city.
Councilmember Pittman.
Well, first question is it possible or potential that we could have the demographer not only look at our city limits jurisdiction, but also our sphere of influence? Because under our guidance from LAFCO that's the area that we're supposed to potentially provide services to. So down the line, should that also be part of the demographer's work so that as we have pending annexations, because I just see a redundancy coming. If we had an annexation here, then that changes District A, B, C, or D, or whatever the case may be. Has that been done in any other city? Looking at the sphere of influence and dealing that would be one question. And I don't know if the attorney's heard of that or seen that or has any experience with that. And then the other point to me, just as a general comment, I see this as probably one of the biggest wastes of government taxpayer money in history, because every city that I've looked at, it didn't do anything. It just made people fighting each other because that district doesn't like this district, and all of a sudden you've got conflict. And all I see is in human behavior, this is just a waste of government taxpayer dollars, especially after we got a census coming next year. Why can't we wait till that census and get it done right? But no, we're going to do it now because some attorney thinks that they want to make money on us. That, to me, is exactly why the words efficiency and effectiveness can't be used for government. We're not efficient and effective when we're dealt a hand from other outside influences. The city charter should be what prevails here. That's what the city citizens decided upon beginning in 1906. And now we have another agency telling this city, these people, how they're going to vote. That just irks me to no end. We're going to follow the process because we don't have the money to fight it, but I see this as a huge waste of the taxpayer dollar. Thank you.
To answer your question, Councilman Pittman, regarding the sphere of influence, by the time we get to 2021, when we will be doing this again, we will most likely have completed the annexations that we're speaking of. To do the sphere of influence when you're doing your districting on such a tight timeline would not be advisable, because it's going to so dilute the pool of the demographics that you're looking for, that you will most likely be sued for having setting up false districts, because we've went outside of what the actual city limit boundaries are. So, but as we go through the annexations in 2021, it would be appropriate at that time. Now, when you're doing that in 2021, if this body is the body that's sitting there doing this, you could certainly ask to have that information. What does that look like? What would that be? But it would only be hypothetical. It would be information only.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Thompson, please.
I have a lot of thoughts about this. Not sure. It's kind of like just, I guess, spitting at the wall or something, because there's not much can be done in regards to this. But it just kind of irritates me. The premise behind this whole move, the basis of it is that the majority of the population is racist. And that's not true.
as already stated, we've already, had and continue to have people that want a diversity of demographics on this council. You can see right here, we have different races, we have different, sexes on here. It's not just, the thought is it's all old white men that needs to kind of be broken down, and it's just not the case for Oroville. One quote that I love is Martin Luther King Jr., who is, I think, an icon for civil liberties, and I think it's something that we've forgotten that he said. He said, "I have a dream that for my children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by demographics. They will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character." And it seems like we're going in the opposite direction. So anyway, this, in my opinion, is dividing our city. I, as a council person, I feel that I represent the whole city. And I like to be able to vote for those people who are on my city council. So essentially, this is taking my and your voice away. Instead of having a voice for people who represent you on the city council, you only have voice for 1 out of 6 on the council. And so for me, it's just taking away the rights of our community to govern ourselves and to have a voice for the direction of our city. So it's just a real sad move, but as I already stated, it's gotten deep into the roots of the Constitution of California. At this point, we have to follow suit. But Oroville is an amazing city. We will rise above it. And sadly, there could be 2 council members who are the most qualified to be on city council, but because of this move, only one of them will be able to represent, which to me is sad, but I guess we got to move forward. But I do think that the city of Oroville has a lot of great candidates, both on this council and in the community, who can run for city council. So for the most part, I think that we're going to be fine. We're going to move forward, and the city will continue to thrive. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And just for the record, if anyone's wondering, I'm not a fan of this. I think it's just creating more division, and I believe that we're going backwards as well. We were well on our way to integrating very well, and now here we're drawing lines again because of race, and it saddens me. I think this is a sad day. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, and I just want to echo all those sentiments expressed by our mayor and vice mayor and Councilman Pittman. And just to add one other little tidbit of information, that the irony of this is that in smaller communities such as ourselves, where we're fairly mixed, that the opposite impact has actually happened, where it's been more difficult for minorities to find their way onto city council. So that's the unfortunate impact. Sometimes good intentions are just that, but in the real world, the impacts can actually reverse the intent of the law. And in this particular case, I think that very well could happen here in Oroville, unfortunately. But again, I think all of us realize that we have to move forward with this. So I agree, it's a sad day, but it's something we must do.
Are there any more comments from the dais? Looking for a motion on item number 10.
I make a motion that we move forward with a resolution of intent to initiate procedures for establishing and implementing by district elections for council members.
I'll second that.
Motion carries.
Moving on to reports, discussion, correspondence. Council announcements. Councilmember Draper.
I just attended one meeting. It was yesterday, and it was the Arts Commission, and that's it for me.
Councilmember Pittman?
The recent Oroville Dam Citizens Committee Oversight Council, or Commission, I guess, one of the things that was brought up was the difficulty of the population along the river creating huge problems. And that committee has many other counties represented on it, and we discovered that Sutter County, Yolo County, and Yuba County have all gone together and passed some specific ordinances to deal with the population along the riverbeds. And it was suggested to me by those officers sitting in that room, as we had talks afterwards, that Oroville might consider the same ordinance and resolution, so that what's going to happen is that population is going to be moved out, and we just soon not have them move here versus and us having the same ordinance. So we might, as a body, consider those ordinances as mirror ordinances for us, because we do have such a large river frontage. And in fact, Sutter County was explaining to me in detail the problem, and one of their big problems is when they have a high water event, he has about 400 people to move out, and that becomes a huge problem for him, public safety wise, irregardless the other problems of sanitation and that thing. But I just thought for compatibility, we might consider the same ordinance that those counties have just passed, and this was like in the last 2 weeks or so. So we could simply get the copy of that ordinance and bring it forward here. It was all worked on by the 3 or 4 counties together, and they passed the same thing, so the rules are all the same along the riverbed. And it might be a worthy thing for us to do as we're upstream from the other parts of the Feather River. And that's about all I had.
Councilmember Smith?
I was at Smart and Final with my wife. It was late, and I noticed I was being shadowed by one of 2 young ladies that were working there at the store. Essentially, the store was empty, and so I got to the checkout to ask, because I was a little bit curious why I was being followed around by a clerk in the store. And I thought, here's something. And the 2 young clerks began to express that there was someone in the back, in the stock area, maybe in the bathroom, that had been there for over half an hour. And they were just concerned, and so they were staying close to me. I guess I must have looked pretty threatening or intimidating, or somehow I could overpower them. And I guess I still have it. But anyway, I asked them, I said, well, you need to contact Oroville PD. And these 2 young clerks said, well, that typically, and this is the reason why I'm sharing this as opposed to privately, because I think it's important, that they felt like that they would not get a response because, vagrancy and whatnot. And we all know the controversy that goes around with that. And so anyway, I said, but let me ask you something. Are you fearful? And they expressed, yes, we're afraid. I said, well, that's enough. Said, so, and so I just want to use this again as maybe just an opportunity, an educational opportunity, that if you observe something, see something, and you're fearful, to never hesitate to call Oroville Police Department. I mean, they're here to protect and to serve and to provide that service to our constituency. And so I called a non-emergency number from my cell phone in the store. And shortly thereafter, OPD arrived and went back and addressed the individual that was in the back of the store, and mitigated that. But anyway, I just think that's important. That and I think that our chief would echo that anytime any of us feel unsafe in a compromising situation, never feel that you cannot reach out to our law enforcement as he's, for whatever reason, and we need to work on that messaging and fixing that, because my goodness, things can spin out of control very quickly, and if you don't feel safe, you call the cops, bottom line. And so that's what I did for these 2 store clerks.
Thank you. Well, if there are no other announcements, I'll, let's see, I did a few things, went to some meeting, had I sit on the Oroville Dam Citizens Advisory Committee with Councilmember Pittman, Senator Nielsen, Assemblyman Gallagher, and we had a very informative meeting. Also had a meeting with City Administrator Bill Agrone, Fish and Game, commanders of the Highway Patrol, Assemblyman Gallagher, Department of Water Resources, about the issues along the river. And there are plans in motion to take care of that area and the citizens that are inhabiting them. So I just want you to know that that we're working on that. Enjoyed a very fine evening at the home of Major Veng Tai for the Hmong leadership and their New Year celebration. And it's always a wonderful time with them. And the hospitality, the food is wonderful. And just wanted to recognize that they're a big part of our community, and they contribute a great deal, and their desire to be included is really nice. And I told them, I said, you remind your culture, your family values, you remind me of America in the 1950s, because it's family, education, respect. It was a very good time. So I just want to comment on that. This on personal note, went to Chicago and watched my son graduate from the Navy, and he was the recruit chief petty officer. He was the top dog, and really proud as an American and especially as a father. He's an amazing young man that's just selfless acts of creating leadership. And he's taught me from the time he was little, and I always told him I admired him. All my kids, I admire them. And he told me, Dad, I learned that with leadership, you can't always rule with an iron fist. Some of them you got to catch with soft hands. And that just really touched my heart, that growth. And I just want to say I'm proud of my son. He's off to his next station in our United States Navy. So thank you for that. So number 2, future agenda items. Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, I'm hoping that, I don't believe that everyone's familiar with the Laura's Law, and it is a California state law. I was wondering if we could get a presentation on that and how it would be instrumental in its effect on our community, our severely mentally challenged. Thank you.
Anyone else? Administration reports. Ruth?
Yeah, I'd like to let everybody know that we are up to date on our OpenGov website. It's our city's financial transparency website. We are uploading monthly. All of our financial information is on there. I'd like to do, I think Councilmember Pittman asked for maybe a workshop. Maybe write some procedures and let people know if there's anything that you want to look at, we could create it and save a saved view for you. It's pretty powerful, so I just want to let you know that we have staff now working on that, and it's uploaded monthly.
Tom?
Bill already mentioned it, but Bill directed Leo, Wes, and I to look at the annexation picture. And I mentioned last meeting, we'll be working with LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, which is in charge of annexation, to first prepare a municipal services review, and then we have to go through a process. And annexation takes 6 to 24 months, and we've started down that road.
Thank you. Bill?
Just want to inform the council that our 2019 paving is just about complete. Today, we weren't, but the paving company was paving on Myers, completing that. We do have some work in the area to do. I went out Saturday and was looking at the paving, and I'm need to speak with our engineer. There's some issues on Orbanger that need to be addressed. There's shoulders that need to be widened and repaired. So if anybody finds damage to a culvert on Orbanger, it wasn't me, but I did run over one. But it wasn't my fault. The road's not right. Anyway, moving forward, that is being completed. We're getting that wrapped up. We also are in the process of starting our list for next year's paving. We have over $2 million worth of paving we're going to be doing next year. So we did a considerable amount this year toward the end of the year, but we'll be doing more hopefully next springtime to a larger tune, so people will start seeing some of their Measure U dollars at work and also seeing those Measure U projects and roads being completed. The issue as far as people camping along the river, it's not just an issue of the unsightliness of it or not wanting people there. It's an issue, number one, of safety of the individuals that are there. That's a working body of water that can rise at any time as needed as DWR opens that spillway. And notification to individuals down there is very important. So I have been in contact with DWR about a siren for that particular part that lets everybody know that the spillway is opening up. It also informs our community in the event of some sort of catastrophic failure or a emergency situation where we need to move and do something. So we're working through all the logistics of that to get that completed. The second issue you run into with people living along the river is environmental impact on the river. When people are living near the river, they tend to do all of their business around the river, if you know what I'm trying to politely say. That's not good for our river. It's not good for other communities either. There's been levels of E. coli in the river and for the fish and things like that that is an impact on that. It also provides a safety issue for all of our community when people are digging and altering levees. Those are levees that protect our city. It isn't something that you can just dig out because it fits your need better. So we are actively working with all of our partners on that. We've had some productive meetings with them. I know Assemblyman Gallagher is very interested in this issue, and hopefully we can come up with some resolutions that solve all of the issues for all involved.
Thank you. Sam?
Nothing from the city attorney's office, Mr. Mayor.
No traffic report?
There was some traffic. I can report that. It was a pretty bad accident. I hope everyone's okay on that.
Yeah. Leo?
Yes. There we go. We officially, we issued 15 permits for Vista Del Oro, so they pulled their first 15 permits, start building homes, and they've got their sales trailer up and they're rolling on that. Meeting next Monday with D.R. Horton to discuss the build out of Linkside Place 2. So they're getting ready to move on that, which is encouraging. Additionally, we've had multiple inquiries into some of the obsolete subdivisions that we've had previously entitled that we can work with doing that. So definitely moving forward on that. There's some pretty good confidence in the market still to keep things going. So that's about it.
Thank you. Chief?
Just want to let the council know we have 2 new police officers starting their employment with the city of Oroville next week. They graduate the police academy this week.
Great. Thank you. Okay, well, if there are no other comments, this meeting will be adjourned until December 17th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m.